who else is coming on? Julie is being silent, but I know she's there. Hi, Julie.
Hello.
And Ken, maybe, I don't know. If you want to say hi, unmute yourself. So, and Barbara Stein, and let's give it a few more minutes to see what's happening. Hi, Barbara. Unmute yourself. So, admit, oh my God. Hi, Ken. Okay. Wait, I just. All right, here's more people coming. Admit Harold. Unmute yourself, Ellie, and turn on your camera, your video, if you want to. Want to just check the chat. Okay. Hi, Susan, saying hello, invisible as always. Hello, Ken and Julie. Some people. Hi, Elle. Unmute yourself.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Valerie.
Eldon.
Kaiser.
All right. Okay. These are two friends of mine from New York. So they're like joining us, which is kind of the cool thing about Zoom.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Valerie, unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Kersey.
More people. Wow.
Hi, Valerie.
Hi, everybody.
This is my cat.
So who are our New Yorkers?
I am Ellie.
Ellie and Karen.
Wow. So how did you get invited to the
They're
party?
my girlfriends. They're my old friends. No,
I am an older friend than Karen.
Let's not get into that.
No.
Hi, Roy. Okay. What time is it? It's
12:02.
12:02. All right. We'll give it till 12:03 and then I'll begin. And I've decided to change up the class. So instead of doing like Torah study, because there is a Torah study also on Friday, I'm going to be doing one-offs, meaning different topics under Jewish wisdom every week, because I think it's more interesting. And it can, we'll go back to our Torah study when we get together, but I would like to have more. Okay, come in, Abby. And Anne, hi. So I'd like to, up the discussion and just teach some stuff that we probably or may not know, but for some good discussion. So this week, I decided to talk about what is a mensch and 9 challenges a good person must meet to be called a mensch, according to our Torah or our Proverbs or even the Pirkei Avot, according to our sages and our study. So, and Don Levy, our incredible communications guy, he's put it on the chat.
Yeah.
Chat? I
Yeah.
don't see it, but maybe you see it.
I
Okay.
see it.
Okay, so it's on the chat. But before we begin, I want to ask you, when you think of what a mensch is, what is a mensch? What do we mean by a mensch? Now, let me just say the word mensch literally means man or person. And in Hebrew, a mensch is called a ben Adam, which means the son of Adam. It means a human being. But in Yiddish and in our Jewish value system, mensch has come to mean something much more. So when you think of the word mensch, just raise your hand so we don't all talk at once and I'll, or lift your finger or whatever. What is a mensch? Ellie?
Moral.
A person who's moral, okay? Anything else from anyone else? What is a mensch? Robert?
I think it's a good person who improves the lives of others.
Improves the lives of others. Nice. Any other ideas about what a mensch could be? Yes, Abby.
Goes beyond what's needed.
Goes beyond what's needed. Anyone else? Miriam.
The word compassion comes to me first. Compassion with a very high sense of justice.
Thank you. So the general, all of these are correct. The general definition that I looked up in many sources was a mensch is a person who can be relied on to act with honor and integrity. So you have both honor and integrity. And the qualities, another definition, someone has fused responsibility with compassion, a sense that one's own personal needs and desires are limited by the needs and desires of other people. A mensch acts with self-restraint and humility, and he's sensitive, or she is sensitive to the feelings of others. So in our Pirkei Avot, which are the sayings of the fathers, which is a section of the Talmud, let me just enter. I find this very interesting. Rabbi Hillel, who we know, Rabbi Hillel is kind of like our go-to guy for humane and kindness and sensitivity to people. Rabbi Hillel said two really famous sayings that are in the Talmud or in the Pirkei Avot, which is the section of the Talmud. One is, most of you may know it, but I'll just repeat it. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? If not now, when? So he's very famous.
Neely mealy.
That's right.
Oh.
So that's one thing he said. There's another incredible story about him where what is this? I don't know. A wealthy pagan, because Rabbi Hillel lived in the Roman times, like in the 70 CE. It was after, where he was approached, and a wealthy Roman said, first he went to his competitor, Rabbi Shammai. The two of them ran the whole study. How do we enter? How do you let them in? Don, would you let in these two people? Okay, here we go. This wealthy pagan went up to Rabbi Shammai and he said, if you can tell me the entire Torah while standing on one foot, I will convert and give all my money to you, the Jewish community. And Shammai said, you're insane. That's impossible. Go away. So he went to Rabbi Hillel and said, if you can tell me the entire Torah on one foot, I will do the same. And Hillel lifted up one foot and he said, do not do unto others what you would not have them do to you. That is the essence of the Torah. The rest is commentary. Go and study it. So he's saying the essence of Judaism is do no harm to others. It's not do to them. Don't do what you want done to you, because we all could be very different. It's a slightly different perspective. It's do not do that to them, what you wouldn't want done to you. And there's an expression among rabbis and scholars, when you want somebody to get to the crux of the matter quickly, you say, okay, tell me it on one foot. On one foot, this is the answer. Meaning we're referring to Hillel. If you know that story, you say on one foot. And so we know this. So he said this also, and I want to start with this. In a place where there are no men, and we can use the word mensch here, because that's what he really means, strive to be a mensch. In a place, literally, it says man, but in a place where there are no men, strive to be a man. It's a place where there are no mensches, strive to be a mensch. Now that is a lot deeper than you think, because we're not saying do it when it's convenient. We're not saying do it when people are you're gonna get recognition. We're not saying, everybody, it's basically saying when nobody else is doing it, you do it. You try to be the mensch. And that is a challenge. I was just reading about in New York how the tempers are fraying and people are screaming at each other. It's still, very crowded there with the coronavirus and the quarantine, and people are not necessarily acting like mensches. They're screaming at each other. And we know there's a famous, my daughter can tell me the name of it, psychological experiment. If somebody knows the name of this experiment, tell me the name, because I can't remember it. It's pretty famous, where they brought people in and they said, you have to shock another person at a certain level. And people were told to hurt people. Actually, they weren't doing it. They didn't know it wasn't really happening. And most people didn't refuse. They were trying to understand, this herd mentality. Sometimes we know this, the mob rule or herd mentality where everybody's doing it, it's okay to do it.
It's the
Did anybody-
the Milgram experiment.
Milgram, that's it, the Milgram experiment, right?
At Harvard.
Right. So people, when there's a herd mentality, when there's a mob rule, will do things. And Hillel's saying, and I'm sure he saw this, in Rome, and there was a lot of persecution against the Judeans and whatever. And there was also later on huge rebellions and people were going crazy. In a place where no one else is acting with integrity and honor, you have to act with integrity and honor. And we can even look at that in our politics today. Some people are acting with integrity and honor and some are not. So, okay, just letting somebody else in. So that's the first one. Does anybody want to add or comment or say anything about the first one, this challenge to do this even when no one else is doing? Okay. So the second one is, and this is from the book of Leviticus, from a section called the Holiness Code, which I'm actually going to be talking about on Friday. And I want to ask you what you think this means. Do not stand by while your neighbor's blood is shed. Literally, it's do not stand upon your neighbor's blood. What do you think that means? Do not stand by while stand upon your neighbor's blood. What does that mean in your opinion?
Kitty Genovese. Remember?
Exactly. Kitty Genovese. Do you want to explain what that is in case nobody?
Well, in Queens, about 20 years ago, more maybe.
Oh, way more.
40
Way more.
maybe.
Yeah.
50, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
50.
Whatever. A woman was being slaughtered, manslaughtered, attacked, and screamed, and people looked out their windows and saw it. Nobody did anything. They didn't call the police. They didn't get involved.
I think it was
Right.
at the subway. Wasn't it?
No, I think it was in a courtyard. I think it was.
Yeah,
It's out on the street.
Right.
It was right. He followed her into her building. He met around
That's
the
right.
corner. Yeah. It was like
Right.
a, right.
So that-
It was
that-
in Kew Gardens.
Kew Gardens, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
It was
Yeah,
in,
outside her apartment building. Yeah.
yes, it
Yeah.
was in the street in front of a tall apartment building. People opened their windows and watched.
They
And no
watched.
one,
Right.
Or they
no
heard,
one did anything.
no one did anything. Now, legally, you are not obliged in like American law or civil law, you are not obliged to do anything. But in Judaism, you are so obliged, you are absolutely demanded to. And the Talmud, I'm going to read you the rabbis this is how the rabbis made law. They looked at quotes or teachings of the Torah, and from that, they understood law. So here's one of them. I have a few of these interesting Talmudic legal reasonings. How do we know that if one person pursues another to kill him, the pursued person must be saved, even at the cost of the pursuer's life? In other words, if you see somebody trying to kill somebody else, chasing them, even if you have to kill the killer, you're allowed, according to the Talmud, from the verse, do not stand by while your neighbor's blood is shed. How do we know that if one sees someone drowning, mauled by beasts, or attacked by robbers, one is obliged to save him? From the verse, do not stand by while your neighbor's blood is shed. And they also went as far as to say that they were so eager to support this thinking that they also ruled that if you're saving someone and you break or damage somebody else's property in the course of saving the person, you're not liable, because they said otherwise people would hesitate to help. If you could be sued, and I think in American law you can be sued for that. Yes, Talia, you're muted.
I know that doctors sometimes don't want people to know they're a doctor, let's say on a cruise ship or something like that, when they're not like in their hospital setting, that it's like they don't want to know, because if
Somebody gets sick.
If
yeah, they
something goes wrong,
they could get sued.
Exactly.
But it's like, that's their oath is to, it's very challenging.
It is very challenging, but the Talmud and the Torah is very clear. You're obliged to step in. If you see, if you see someone being hurt, according to us, to be a mensch, to be a good Jew, in fact, you need to speak up. You need to say something. And that is also hard to do. Has anybody ever been put in that situation where you had to speak up and it was, my sister and I were once walking down the street and we saw a man beating his girlfriend.
Mm.
And we started screaming at him, stop it, we're calling the police. And we were a little scared. We looked at each other, should we say something? Yes, let's say something. And we said, we're calling the police, leave her alone. And he let her alone and she ran off. So you have to sometimes, according to the Torah, that's a kind of goodness that we are obliged to perform. Yes, Valerie, did you want to say something?
I wonder, I've been in that position too, and I'm afraid to speak up. I'm wondering if you were emboldened by the fact that you were with your sister. When I'm with somebody else, I feel I can do that more than.
I agree, but even if I didn't do that, one could call the police anyway.
Yeah.
No,
I agree. I agree.
A lot of people think, oh, I don't have to do it. Somebody else will do it. I don't need to report it. Somebody else will report it.
True.
The Torah and the Talmud says, no, you're obliged to report it, to take that step. You don't have to endanger your own life. Now, it was a well-lit street. We could have run into a restaurant or something, but we hesitated, but we felt emboldened. You could call the police. You could alert someone. You could make an alarm or something. I once saw in New York, this is many years ago, a woman on the street started screaming because some guy grabbed her purse. And I looked out the window. This is my apartment, my studio apartment. And 3 guys came running out of an apartment with baseball bats.
Wow.
And chased the guy. I mean, it was unbelievable. And in another instance, I was in a restaurant in New York. This was like in the 70s, I guess. It wasn't too safe. And I was sitting with my friend, and these people walked in and they picked up her purse off, well, you don't do this anymore, off the back of her chair. And the waitress said, they stole your purse. And it was a really small restaurant, like it had 15 people in it. The whole restaurant jumped up and ran after the person. And it was a couple girls, and they turned around and threw the purse and ran away because everybody was running after them. So of course there's safety in numbers, but the Torah says you can't ignore it. So that is another thing.
I have a situation, Susan, where I was in the subway and I saw a mother beating her kid. And I said to the woman, stop it. And then she beat the kid even more. You see what you made me do? You see somebody's looking at us. You see what I was caught between shutting up because I was afraid the kid would get beaten more.
Yes. I have read things about how you're supposed to, in that situation, intervene in a different way, psychologically say, oh, can I help you? Or divert as opposed to attack. But even so, that would be perhaps a time to call, record it, report it, or say, I'm reporting this. You're right. It's a hard dilemma. The Torah says we can't ignore it.
Right.
We do what we can do, considering. So that's the second one. So here's a third one that I think is very interesting. You shall neither side with the mighty to do wrong, okay, nor shall you show deference to a poor person in his dispute. In other words, you have to be just. You can't say, well, this person is wrong, but they're poor and I feel sorry for them. So this is to a judge in particular. I'm gonna rule for the person even though they're not really entitled to this ruling because you feel sorry for them. So there's an obligation to be just and fair and not let your emotions either to favor the rich or disfavor or favor the poor in terms of how you behave. So that was another one. And sometimes that's hard because you do want to you have compassion and you want to do the right thing, but the right thing according to the Torah is to be fair and to be just. So that's kind of a challenge also to do that. And that's another one that we're obliged to do. Any comments on that or questions? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
one has to have faith in the justice system. And if the judge is constantly favoring the poor, when the poor person has done wrong, then then the public loses faith that justice is being served, and you really need that in a society.
I agree with you. Any other comments of any lawyers have anything to say about that? Or have you ever
No.
witnessed?
I can chime in. I used to be a public defender, for those of you who don't know me. And I'm continually amazed and impressed that the whole foundation of our justice system seems to be built on what, Jews have done for thousands of years.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Mhm.
It's like, this is the foundational way of perceiving the world and behaving that's like guided the whole development of mankind. It's really quite beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi there. Can you hear me, Rabbi?
Yes,
Dan,
Anne, yes.
I think this is extremely interesting because, and I always stand up for the underdog, and I just think we have a lot of structure. You can imagine what I'm thinking, right?
Yes, I actually got out of jury duty, but I was in a jury duty, and I really felt sorry for the woman. A poor woman's son worked for a garbage collection company, and he fell off the back of the truck because there were no handles,
Huh.
and he got run over.
Oh
They
my.
were
Aye.
suing the company, and the judge said to me, do you think you can be fair? And I said, no. I feel sorry for the woman. I won't be fair. I just see the corporate, greed and laziness here, and I'm not going to be able to be fair. But I recused myself
Yeah.
because I knew that I couldn't be fair. But I understand, Anne, exactly what you're saying. We feel like people have had such a rough deal. We need to give them a break. That being said, there's this fantastic ruling in the Talmud, which I love. Here's a question for you. A woman dropped a drop of milk in a pot of soup, which is, meat and milk combined. So she goes to the rabbis and she says, is it still kosher? If you know this, don't say it. If you don't know it, I'd like your opinion. Is it kosher or not kosher? What do you think?
I know it.
Miriam?
Yes, it's kosher
Okay.
because it depends upon the percentage that's left in the pot. I'm not sure of what the percentage is, but I think, unless I'm wrong, that the rabbis ruled it was kosher.
Okay, but let's say, well, let's continue. Other opinions about it? Valerie?
I would think it would be kosher because you don't want to waste food. That's the overriding ruling. And that saves lives if you don't go hungry. You don't want
That's
people
good.
to go hungry.
Yes, that's good. Any other opinions? Kosher or unkosher? Talia, unmute yourself.
I know this one.
Wait a minute, then don't tell it. Talia?
Yeah, I won't.
Well, from what I've learned is that on Pesach, the standards are higher for that.
Right.
So I don't know if when you give the answer, if that applies to that, but I've already gone over this with the rabbi, so I don't want to say and let people talk. But the one thing I do remember is I think it's on Pesach when the standards, the percentage, it's more, even the smallest could be a problem.
Okay, let's say it's beyond the 1/60th. The 1/60th is a lot, usually the standard or whatever. So the rule, oh wait, Cheryl, did you want to say something?
I would say it would not be kosher.
Because
It's just not pure. It's
not pure. So the rabbi, you're all right. The rabbi said, it depends if the person can afford another chicken. If you're too poor, it's kosher. If you can afford to replace it, it's not kosher. So there's that humanity of, we're not going to put a hardship on a poor person, but if you can, you should change it. But if you can't afford another chicken, it's fine. And I love that in terms of, favoring the poor. It's not in judgment. It's not against anyone else, but we do try to, give justice when we can. So I thought that was I love that ruling. I thought it was very interesting. It's not kosher, but if you can't afford another chicken, it's kosher. I love, that's kind of Judaism in a way, it's always, we can wiggle around depending on the humane or inhumane standards of what's happening. So the next one is, you shall rise before the aged and show deference to the old. And I love this because Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel said, what we owe the old is reverence, but all they ask for is consideration, attention, and not to be discarded and forgotten. What they deserve is preference, yet we do not even grant them equality. Act in a manner that you do not embarrass the old person you will one day become. So there's, in Judaism, there is a mandate to, rise, meaning give respect, and show kindness and deference to the old, which is a challenge for people sometimes with elderly parents, with sick parents. I mean, in some cultures, the parents always stay at home. In a lot of cultures, we're unable to do that. But we're obliged to honor the elderly and not to discard them. It seems obvious, but it doesn't seem to be the norm in a lot of the American society. So this is another one of these things that makes you a mensch. So the next one, though, I want to ask your opinion. This is from the book of Deuteronomy. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. Okay, the rabbis ask, why is the word justice there twice? What do you think? I would love you to just think about it. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. Why can't you just say justice, you shall pursue, or you shall pursue justice? But it's there twice, and the rabbis believe that every word is not extra. Everything has an important meaning, an important message. They actually believe every letter. They actually believe that the spaces between, the Kabbalists said the spaces between the letters have meaning, and that it's white fire on black fire, the spaces, holy. So why do you think the word justice is there twice? Talia?
Because if you, let's say you build self-esteem by doing esteemable acts, if you carry out justice, you are just. Maybe, so it's like a noun and a noun and an
A verb?
Verb.
Or an
No, a verb.
Adjective. You're just.
Okay.
So you're saying that when you act in a just way, then you create justice that makes you a just person.
Right. So justice. So it's like you will be, if you act this way.
You will be
So
just.
noun, the verb.
Thank you. Okay. Robert, you had your hand up?
I think it's a call. It's to put a break on your own mind, because it's asking you to reflect on whether your current definition of justice is truly, in fact, justice. So it's inviting you to reconsult because I know in most, like when I was in criminal courts, people tend to have a real emotional reaction to a police report. Well, we got a, or whatever. And it's saying, calm down, define justice in your head, look at all the facts, and meet it out from reason rather than passion and bias.
Okay, so it's like an emphasis and a moment to reflect.
Reflect on yourself and your own definition of justice.
Oh, thank you.
And whether it's really, truly justice.
That's great. Any other ideas why we have justice twice? Why did they put
Maybe
it?
it's the kind of way to describe the second justice, that's justice.
Okay, so it's just justice. That's what you're saying. Okay.
Justice.
Yeah, that's actually one of the ideas. Any other idea of why it's justice? Take a
Well,
guess.
it's for emphasis.
Yeah, it's
I
for
mean, that's the simplest thing. They usually say in the Torah when the word is repeated, it's made more emphatic, and it's really a wake-up call.
Okay, yes, that's very strong. Anyone else have any idea about it? So
It seems
all
like-
of you,
Wait,
yeah, Hannah?
I don't see I see, because you mentioned being a mensch and doing for others. So there seems to be a sense of caring for others that is implied here.
Good. Yes.
Compassion or caring or something in that extent. That's what I'm feeling.
Feeling, yeah. Well, all of you are correct. And another interpretation is close to what Hannah said in a way. It's that when you pursue justice, and you others said this in other ways, it has to be in a just way. In other words, you can't, the ends don't justify the means. If the means toward justice are unjust, that is what the rabbis say is the double meaning, that you have to be pursuing justice by being fair, by being just, and not by twisting the law or looking the other way or whatever. They say it has to be, so you're right, it has to come from this place of integrity and honor to pursue justice. I also, this is my own interpretation, thought there's one justice for yourself that you should find, you have a right to justice. And the second one is for others. I thought it was for two different recipients. That's just one thing that I came up with, that there's justice for you should pursue, and justice for those other people who need justice, who can't pursue it for themselves. But that's not what the rabbis say. The rabbis say the one about the ends do not justify the means. So when we do something, it has to have integrity and honor. Did somebody want to say something?
I was going to say, you can't pursue something in the spirit of justice at all costs.
Correct. Exactly. You can't do that, which sometimes, we say, oh, I'll just bend the rules because I think the outcome is good. The rabbis know, they're very pure about this. They say you have to have integrity because your own soul, your own character is also important. And the Kabbalists and the rabbis, the Hasidim believe that your whole purpose here on earth is to elevate and refine your soul through good deeds and compassion. And so if you're not doing that, then you're defeating the purpose. Okay, now these two I'm going to put together, and I think these are challenging. So these are both in the book of Exodus, sorry. When you encounter your enemy's ox or ass wandering, you must take it back to him. When you see the ass of your enemy lying under its burden and would refrain from raising it, you must nevertheless raise it with him. In other words, people you don't like, your enemies, if you see they've lost something, you have to return it. But not only that, if they're struggling with something, you have to help the person. No matter what your personal feelings, if someone is in distress, you have to help him or her or return something to him and her, even though I don't think that's our natural inclination to do that, especially like helping somebody that you are at odds with. But there's, again, this idea of refining your soul, of doing the right thing, to be a mensch, to have this integrity and honor. Has anybody ever been challenged with that, having to do that? I'm trying to think if I have. I mean, we usually sort of avoid the people that that are our enemies. I mean, enemy is a strong word also, but they're saying your enemy,
Can you ask the question again?
I'm sorry?
Can you ask the question again, please?
Oh, have you ever had that experience where you were challenged to help someone that you were at odds with, and what decision you made? Yes, Hannah.
The first thing that comes to mind, and I think the enemy can just be not necessarily I'm challenged to help the father of my son, who also happens to be my ex-husband.
Right.
I feel like he doesn't need to be enemy in the word that.
Right. Someone you're at odds with, someone you're in
Exactly.
conflict with in
There
our
needs to
lives.
be a
Yes.
resolution, and there needs to be a shared, there needs to be a compromise, a sacrifice, a negotiation for the sake of our child. That's what first comes to my mind.
Yes. That's perfect. I mean, I think you're right. And according to the Torah, yes, Cheryl.
I had to do that with my stepmother when I brought my father here, and it requires forgiveness.
It requires forgiveness. It requires a large spirit, you know, to be the
Yeah.
bigger person, to open yourself and say, okay, I hold myself to a certain standard and I want to live up to this. And this is, and did the result for both of you, Hannah and Cheryl, how did it make you feel about yourself?
Larger and open-hearted, and she wanted to see my father after the divorce, and she did terrible things that not work good, but I don't need to. But I elevated my spirit, and we now have a wonderful relationship, the relationship we always wanted, by that one act of letting her come and visit my dad and spend time with him. And it was easy for me to do because it just felt like I didn't have the power to say no. It wasn't my right, you know. Does that make sense?
Yes. And the result is exactly what the Torah expects that you will get, that it will open you and fill you and create this surprising goodwill between you and the person you're at odds with. Miriam.
What Hannah said, which I wasn't thinking of at all, and she brought up the plight of children of divorced parents and how difficult it is. And maybe one needs to elevate themselves more towards what the Torah would expect of them. How difficult it is for so many not to talk against the ex, who at times were their enemy. They really were. And how the Torah would want you not to set your child against your ex because of the extra problems it would give your child.
Yes, and we're going to do a whole thing on Lashon Hara, or the power of words, and all that.
Exactly, the power of words, powerful.
Very powerful. Susan.
This made me think of a time in my childhood in 6th grade, and it combines several of them. It just flashed into my mind. There was one of them obnoxious girls in the 6th grade class, and no one liked her, including me. But the other girls started an I Hate Bonnie club. And I thought that somehow I just felt that was really wrong. And I spoke to them. So that's, said, I don't like her either particularly, but this is wrong to have this I Hate Bonnie club, and I'm not going to join. So some of that is not stand by the blood of your neighbor.
That's right.
Pick up the ox. And I was troubled, spoke to my parents, and then I talked to the teacher. And the teacher talked to the class and made it go away essentially. And I felt in 6th grade, I felt good about doing that, although Bonnie was still somewhat obnoxious. She reformed some of her ways so that, you know, people wouldn't do that. And there was a third, I realized it did 3 of the commandments. Those were 2 that you had just talked about, or at least the Mishnah, the prohibitions. But I think that's standing up to bullying is one of them too, that you can not stand by the blood of your neighbors.
Right.
Bullying is a constant factor. So
And considered shedding blood, actually.
that's correct.
Bullying and gossip or cruel speech is considered like shedding blood, because the rabbis say that the red of the embarrassment in your cheeks is like you're shedding blood. It's like murder, because you're murdering their soul. So you're right. It is standing by the blood of your neighbor. Did someone else have their hand up? Okay. So we have 2 more. So there are, by the way, many of you may know this, there's one mitzvah or commandment that is repeated 18 times in the Torah. It's the most repeated commandment. And the basic version of it is, remember the stranger because you were a stranger in the land of Egypt. But I found a specific one. I was looking at them all. And this was very, very specific. When a stranger resides with you in your land, you shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as one of your citizens. You shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. This is real. And the last one we're going to talk about is love your neighbor as yourself. So yeah, but this is, to me, is about immigrants, foreigners, others. It's so specific. The person who lives in your land with you, who's not like you, who's an immigrant, a foreigner, a visitor, even a visitor. The rabbis say this applies to like a visiting business person, like they say a merchant who comes from another land. Or refugees, they shall be to you as one of your citizens. Now that is not the way this country treats immigrants, as we know, but the Torah is saying, you have to welcome them because we know how, another place it says, you know how it feels. And we know that when Jews came to America, you know, in the great wave of immigration, or any foreign group, the Irish, the Asian, the Chinese for sure, and the Japanese were like put in camps. We know how horrible the stranger is treated by others. And so, so this is one that really impresses upon us what we can do for others in some way. And there are a lot of people who are, I didn't do it, but you know, they have these cleaning ladies, cleaning people who, some of them are legal, some of them are illegal, and they're just letting them go and not paying them or not helping them in any way, which they can't, some of them apply for any kind of unemployment, and you're really putting them in a very desperate situation. And the Torah is saying, you can't oppress a person like this. You need to help them as much as you can, in any way you can. And I want to conclude with the 9th one, which, you know, is really, hold on, I have this whole thing about it. It's love your fellow as yourself. Now, what's interesting is, a lot of Jews, religious Jews, will say when it says love your neighbor or your fellow as yourself, they're talking about other Jews, only other Jews. But we see from the previous quote, the stranger you shall love as yourself as well. So that's not true. And stranger is also the word ger. Ger means stranger. It also means a convert, somebody who's become Jewish, and you must treat them, people who have chosen Judaism, like one of your own, and love them as yourselves. So I don't know, I'm getting a ton of texts. I hope, I don't know if they are. They're nothing to do with this class, so whatever. Anyway, so when it comes to love your fellow as yourself, hold on. All right, so what does that mean to you? Love your neighbor as yourself. What does that look like to you? What does that look like, do you think? This is the big one that, you know, Christians like to say that Jesus said, the golden rule or whatever, but no, it's in the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, the holiness code. It's like amazing that it's in there. So the Baal Shem Tov, who's the founder of the Hasidic movement, who I love, he's so wise. He said, what does it mean to love your fellow as yourself? And this is fantastic. Just as we love ourselves despite our faults we know we have, so should we love our neighbors despite their faults we see in them. In other words, there's another quote in the Pirkei Avot, give people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes we have a standard for ourselves and a higher or unreasonable standard for others. Conversely, this is my opinion, sometimes we're kinder to others than we are to ourselves. Sometimes we hold ourselves up to impossible standards that we wouldn't hold our friends to. Our friends can have faults, but we have to be perfect. And we know a lot of college kids and people in their 20s and even high school kids have terrible anxiety and anxiety and depression because they're not perfect. For some reason, they think they need to be perfect and they don't. So there's both sides. There's love your neighbor as yourself, and there's love yourself as your neighbor. Another thing that they say is it's that you should be, it means also being concerned with other people's kindness, their honor, that you don't want to dishonor them just like you would not want to be dishonored, which has a lot to do with gossip or bullying or humiliation as well, that are saying bad things about people. So really it's to love your neighbor as yourself. It's maybe just to do the things that we talked about. And the most important one of all, so, all right, before we conclude, I just want to ask, do any of these, do you have a favorite? And I'm going to just reread them one more time quickly, and you can tell me which one resonates the most with you. In the places where there is not a mensch, be a mensch. Don't stand by where your neighbor's blood is shed. You shall neither side with the mighty or show deference to the poor. Rise before the aged. Justice, justice you shall pursue. When you encounter your enemy's ox, you must take it back to him. And if they are struggling, you must help them raise it. Be kind to the stranger because you were a stranger. Love your fellow as yourself. So these are the 9 challenges of being a mensch. Do you have a favorite or one that you could take away with you today as we say goodbye?
Hi, sorry, I don't have a photo.
It's okay, hi.
I think the one about the ox, because it might solve a lot of problems.
And I solve problems if we would go out of our way for the people we don't like. As we saw from both Hannah and Cheryl, it makes a difference when you do that. You open yourself up to people that you're at odds or conflict with. Any other favorites? Cheryl, you're muted.
I like the last one because I've noticed during this COVID time, I'm really seeing everybody, people that I just didn't see before, whether it's the garbage man and stopping and asking, is he protected? Whether it's the nanny who's just sitting on the yard forever with this kid, for hours. And when I come out with my dog, really seeing people and connecting and just saying hello. It's not like I have to love them, but just see people is so powerful to be seen. I think it just means so much.
I agree with you. And we're appreciating delivery people and grocery people and garbage collectors. We do see them. I think you're absolutely right. That's beautiful. Anyone else have one that resonates with them? Talia, unmute yourself.
The first one.
Be a mensch.
Yeah, it's like the to do the right thing even if no one's looking. And I find that having a teenage kid and being 50-ish and single, it's like if you don't have a presence on Instagram or something, it's like, do you exist? But the reality is that we do. And that if I'm doing things that are good, even if they're not being posted, that's what matters. And so that even if there was no media and there is no camera on anyone, to do the right thing is like, even if no one's looking, like do the right thing, even if there's no, like the mitzvah, like a true mitzvah.
That's true, exactly. Anyone else want to pick one that they resonate with them today?
I think the golden rule one is the most interesting. And the reason it's interesting is that it brings to a head all of the problems of trying to be a moral person in a sometimes immoral world. And I keep coming back to this. There's the lofty world of God and ideas and principles and virtues. And then there's like the day-to-day here on the floor of the jungle, and how we mediate protecting ourselves and our loved ones and things we care about in the face of potential threats from others. It's like how do you manage that in a fair way? And at what point is a person obliged to stand up and say, I'm not going to treat you the same because you're in some way. So what should we, like, do these principles apply to like the Third Reich? I don't think so. You know, it's like, so it's all and I think the reason this one appeals to me is it forces us to always think about who we are, what we're trying to do in the world that we live in, and how to manage it in the most moral, compassionate way you can, including yourself and your loved ones.
And don't forget, it says strive to be a mensch. You're not going to do it all the time. We can't. We're not perfect. It's do your best. And we can talk about the whole Holocaust thing and how people were mensches, the Jews among each other, and the amazing things they did for each other. That's a whole other conversation. But I want to just, anyone else want to share one of these that resonate with them today?
I guess I will, Barbara. I was single for so many years and I never had a child before I met my beloved husband. And for all of those years, I was never left out of any Jewish dinner or function. And I don't know if it's true among the Gentiles as well, but I love the fact that Jewish people are always cognizant of including a quote unquote stranger into their home and make an effort to treat them as the most important guest in that home, always so comfortable and everything. I'll never forget that kindness.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Anyone else? Well, then I want to wish you a beautiful, oh yes, Miriam.
I just want to, Barbara mentioned the word kindness, and I don't think we can emphasize that word enough. I think that has to be very top in our list of priorities for how we need to improve ourselves. And I find that word very, very operable in my life as I get older. And I think Judaism implies it in almost every mitzvah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I want to wish you all a beautiful week, and I hope you will take some of this and elevate your souls and be well and be safe. And I look forward to seeing you next week. So a little early, but Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It was a pleasure to study with you this afternoon.
Shabbat Shalom.